Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And in this episode, we are leaving the realm of the topical and firmly planting ourselves in the rule of long-time opinions rooted in the casual. I don't know, when we go to do the podcast, we have a number of topics that we could pick from, sort of like a Rolodex, a spreadsheet, that apparently sends John into conniption fits.
I'm in a perpetual state of conniption fit. Like, my existence is two things, and that is 300 milligrams of caffeine and conniption fit. Like,
what a conniptious life you lead. Is conniptious a word? I don't know. I'm just going to keep making these shots and someone else can fact check.
Capricious? I don't know.
That's a different word. But we are capriciously moving into a topic that was not on our list. There we go. Transition. Saved you. Because to be honest, I feel like it doesn't get talked about a lot. Not in casual environments. But I think it's something that's worth doing. And that is the idea of mastery of a faction. And what that means and why you should maybe think about doing it, even if you're a casual player who, like the people we normally make the show for. But maybe you shouldn't do it in the way that some places on the internet would make you think you should. And let's talk about it. First, hobby time and games played. So, John, what you been up to?
Flesh Eater Quarts. A lot of it. You know that book that has never been released for them for 3rd edition AOS? Mm-hmm. The Ancient Faction, the oldest book? Yeah, I decided that I hated myself and wanted to work on Flesh Eater Quarts. Because of a story me and Joe told each other, and so now I have, can just make my own Flesh Eater Quarts. It's cool. It's neat. I love the lore.
Their lore is so good. It's so devilishly good, and I am sad that they have not worked with it a lot.
Yes, it is phenomenal. I wish there were Flesh Eater Quarts novels. I would kill for a Necron's Twice Dead King, but for Flesh Eater Quarts, that'd be so good. I would love it. I'd demand it, actually. If anyone from GW is listening, which I know you're not, please,
to us,
for fuck's sake, give me this. But no, the other thing I've been working on is my S2D, my Slaves of Darkness. Really close to having that entire army painted, like 4 units away. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty big feat for that because I'm trying a little bit harder on them, painting all the little bits and bobs, painting the armor, doing weathering effects, doing a bunch of stuff. But once they're all painted, I just have to finish the bases and done. And I have to know November where we're gonna have a bunch of games played. We're gonna be playing games in between, but the big game for AOS is gonna be in November, so I got time. And I'm trying to have them both ready. But then be a good time. Other than that, I worked on some Dark Angels. Yeah, I worked on some Dark Angels this week too. I've been doing a lot of hobby recently. It's been a thing I do every night for a while, for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. It's been a good time.
That's awesome, man. I have seen some of the Flesh Eater Quarts coming along. How long do you think it's going to take you to paint that army, though?
What's your
thoughts on your color scheme or approach?
I'm going to paint them in a similar fashion to the legend himself, Vince Ventrilla, the man who paints many model forever, who I aspire to be with production level.
God, that'd be hard to touch. Vince is a monster.
He's a machine. He makes so much work. But yeah, he does amazing videos, and so he does a video where he actually paints Flesh Eater Quarts, 77 models or something like that, really quickly, over the course of a couple days. And there's a lot of techniques he's using in there that I really like. Him and some of Ninjon's techniques, I think I'm going to add together to try to make really quick speed paint army that isn't slap chop.
I would also recommend Squidmar has a video about speed painting Flesh Eater Quarts. Very good.
Yeah,
I would steal some of those.
And I think fleshier quartz lend themselves to being speed painted because they have all very similar tones. And I'm not going to use my normal like enamel weathering on them this time because I think a glossy finish will actually help add to like what they are.
Bold take. Interested to see how that pans out.
But I'm not going for like glossy. Like there's going to be parts of them that are glossy, but parts of them I don't want to be like super matte. I want it to be like normal acrylic.
See, that's what, if you want gloss contrast, I would maybe make them super matte. Like, if, for example, I presume you're going to do this with a gore effect. I assume the gore effect is what you want turbo glossy.
Yeah, but I want to do it lightly. Like,
especially if you're going to do it lightly rather than go ham. I would maybe counter that a small amount of gloss pops best if it's surrounded by a mostly matte miniature. So it allows your eyes to like glaze over all of the matte and immediately pop to your gloss highlight high points, wherever you want those areas of focus to be. So like around the mouth, the hand, the weapon, like whatever is like shoveling meat into their face. But if everything's glossy, nothing is glossy.
I admit you're correct.
I only say this because I used that trick with my Beast of Chaos to get dramatic effect. Like when everything is matte and then you add some blood that's very shiny by nature, it just pops.
Yeah. But that's what I'm currently working on. And then on my side project table, because of course I do, is the Conquest minis.
Yeah, you got to build them before I can play them with you.
Yeah. Well, like for me, it's hard to like. It's much easier to sit down and be like, I'm gonna build stuff. Less thought. But painting requires so much more like intention. And so sometimes when I want a hobby, but I don't have the energy to paint, it is easier for me to just build stuff and watch like a TV show. And so, like that's what I feel like the Conquest minis are going to be for me. Is like building and TV show time. It's going to be really good. Because I genuinely want to play Conquest. I think it's going to be a phenomenal time. I've watched a bunch of battle reports for it. I think it's going to be a game that you and I specifically will really enjoy.
I demoed it. It was great. So delightful.
But the only other thing, like I've been reading the new battle pack and like getting all like involved. Got a game in, playing it. Played against Seth's Gloomspike Kits with S2D. It was very good. It was very fun. Huge fan. Very engaging. But definitely Battle Pack adds a bunch of new rules that are you got to know when you're going into it. But I think they're mostly good. The only issue I have is the Blizzard.
I think Blizzard feels much.
It feels really bigly, and I think that like I love the flavor of it, but I would like it to just be like maybe 46 mortal wounds is a little swingy. Maybe tone that down to like 2d3. Much more measured approach. But I mean, overall, like I've been looking at the new stuff for AOS, and they got their data slate, and it's like, it's good. It's good stuff. And like briefly, I'm gonna talk about 40k. I still love it. That new like the fallout from the data slate has questioned some of my beliefs in our previous videos, because some of it has like evened out more than I thought it would. So that's super cool.
I still have core issues with some of their design directions, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but like I still think that the game is like in a better space than it was, and I still really want to play it. I think it'd be a good time, but alas, there's only so many hours in the day. So I will try to squeeze in some games with the new Tyranids and Space Marines as I can.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how everything evens out. But like I was putting all of my Tau in to like a little list builder just to see how many points I have. For me to bridge the gap to 200 to 2,000 points again would be hundreds of dollars. It's wild. I don't know how I like that.
Yeah.
Don't know how I like that.
It's rough.
I did play some 40k though. For like my piece of this. So like one of the things I struggle with is I don't get to play a ton of games outside of like our group get-togethers, but those are only a few times a year because people come in from, multiple states and all over the place, and some people drive like 5.5, 6 hours to get here. And then we play for, 2 days, maybe 3 days if it's like a holiday weekend or something. And then I don't really get to play in the in-between, which is not ideal.
And like we'll play every once in a while, but it's playing guard versus orcs for the 6th time in a row starts to feel rote. I'll say that.
Yes. So I've just come to the realization that like if I'm gonna play games, I gotta play games outside of the playgroup. So on a whim, like my shop happened to be starting up their 40K league again after a good little break. And I was up there demoing Conquest, which was delightful. It was so good. I had a great time. And they're like, well, we're starting in like 2 days. Do you want in? Said yes. See how it goes. And I'm playing Custodes, because in the balance data slate, they got shattered in the kneecaps. Perfect time for me to pick them up. I don't have to feel bad. And honestly, I don't think their win rate's as bad as it looks. I think that win rate is being pulled down quite a bit by like 2 and 3 warriors who like just Googled what is the best list in 40K and then bought it, but don't have the understanding of the faction to know how to like play the faction. So then they tried to bring their same
rope the topic into
like
this.
tried to bring the same list again, and then like they're probably getting wrecked and they don't know how to flex. So like I think the faction win rate looks terrible, but now they're all going to sell their Custodes and jump to whatever the new hotness is. Probably Tau right now.
Hey, cheap
Custodes to eBay. And that's going to drag the win rate down, but I think it's going to buoy back up. So I played my first game of the league against Mark. He's a guy at the shop who I've met a couple of times. We've played some like AOS games before in the pre-pandemic time. And he's playing Necrons, and it turns out it's his first like game of non-orcs in 40K in years. So many years. And knew very little about 10th edition and all the changes and stuff. So like I was very glad that I like brought a generalist list rather than something that was tuned up, and I'm glad I brought a more generalist army because it really allowed us to have a great time playing the game and slow it down a little, pump the brakes, and just, talk through the sequencing. What's changed compared to 9th edition? Here's how things work now. Let's try to like get together on your faction rules and make sure you're getting all your buffs and stuff. And I'm not a Necron specialist, but at least I've fought Travis's to know how they work, which is very helpful. And we had a delightful game, very killy. TLDR, Monolith scary.
Monolith is real scary, and I'm glad. It's taken many editions for the big pyramids to be terrifying again.
I didn't do a single wound to it.
I love those little models. Like I love the way they look.
It's cool.
Necrons was the army I played in 5th edition, and I'm not gonna lie, I've felt the draw a couple of times. It is tempting.
They're a cool army.
Because of the Monolith army, the Monolith.
His Monolith was gorgeous. He magnetized it to where like it all comes apart and stuff, and then inside it he ran LED lights up into and through it. So like the Monolith lit up with like light as it blew a good portion of my army off the table. And it's so pretty. I can't even be upset. Like, what? Fair. God, you have LED lights. Like, what am I going to say to that?
Hell yeah. Necron Christmas lights. Let's go.
Like, I killed your army, and I'm just like, cool. And we had a really good back and forth game. He popped both my Dreadnoughts and my Land Raider and a whole unit of Guard and a Hero. But I obliterated the other half of the board of his stuff. And I ended up getting ahead on points. But it was a very, very fun game. Mark was a delight. Whole bunch of like fun, terrible, shitty jokes thrown back and forth across the table. Which, let's be honest, that's how you determine if a game is good or not.
Were the vibes right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like casual or competitive game. Are the vibes right? Yeah, a good game. Let's go.
Loved it. Had a great time. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that league now. Just to like continue playing, meet some cool people, test some skills, try some new lists, some little iterations after the points changes. Maybe I get to change up the list a little bit as we go along. Sounds fun. Secondarily, for me, hobby has just been a ton of 3D printing and painting. so much. So much. I have been working more on Lumineth, and I finished the first unit of Spearmen. I painted a whole second unit of Spearmen. I 3D printed 20 Alarith Stone Guard, and then 10 Dawn Rider Cavalry. I have now got on bases and glued magnets onto primed and started painting the 10 Alarith Stone Guard. And we're hammering our way through the list, as well as I got like 2 little foot heroes painted, and I kit bashed myself a new hero, because I need a Venari Dawn Lord, and I'm gonna make one myself.
Look at you. I'm also kit bashing a model for my Flesh Eater Quartz out of like 3 separate files to make my own cool king on Terrorgeist.
That's the fun. That's the fun.
It's honestly, I think that's the thing that I really like. For a while, for 3D printing, I was like, oh man, 3D printing means I get to like cheap Warhammer. Not really. What the fun is that I'm like creatively, I go wherever the fuck I want.
That's what I like. Is like, I look at, for example, Beast of Chaos, who I'm also fighting myself to not play, is like, oh, I really like that faction, but I don't like the models. I can't play them. Now, I love that faction, but I hate the models. That don't matter at all. I'll find models I like. Somewhere, someplace, I will find them.
Somewhere on my factory.
Yeah, it's a delight. So, like, Lumineth, like, the flavor and the fluff is so good. I love it. Dead on. Don't change a thing. The models, close, a little off. So instead, I found these really cool, like, Roman hoplite-inspired models from Gamak, like a cool line of like Roman flavored Lumineth, and that's the good. That's the flavor right there. Don't change a thing. So now I'm running with it, and I'm trying to get it painted before the game day in November, and it's a big goal. I don't know if I'm gonna hit it, but like sometimes you just want to make little soft goals and have a time. Give it our best.
Yeah.
What's the worst that happens?
That sometime soon we're going to play Beast of Chaos versus something. Like, we're doing it soon. Buckle up. We'll figure it out in the schedule. We'll pen it in.
I would need to print a little more Beast of Chaos, but I'm in. I love Beast of Chaos. They're so fun. They're tricky, but they're fun. And I don't know, it requires a lot of mastery to be able to play that faction. Even at like a competitive level. Just to like get the basics. But once you do, it's a great time. Let's talk about that. So, John.
Joe.
Mastery.
Yeah.
This is a tricky conversation.
Is that stat in World of Warcraft that, like, improves your class-based passive skill?
Oh my god, you know what that stat does, you friggin' nerd?
I haven't played that game in months. It's trapped in my brain
you
forever.
Absolute dork, that was the skill I never looked at. If a gear thing said mastery bonus, I went, bye. No.
No, so, like, mastery, right? What is mastery in tabletop war games? I think a lot of folks would say it is being the best at your faction, but I would argue it is knowing what your faction does and knowing how to make proper decisions with your faction.
Yeah, I think it also correlates to, like, a level of comfort with the mechanics. Like, that's, I think, really how you can tell if mastery is happening.
I think a good example of this is like Iron Jaws, right? Like Iron Jaws or something like Orcs in 40K, where like you know what your objective is, right? Like your objective is to get in and fight. And so you learn all of your tricks for how to get in there. For Iron Jaws, it's like Mighty Destroyers, it's pushing forward, it's knowing how to like position and move yourself in a way where you can't get countercharged beforehand. And with like Orcs, it's being able to utilize the terrain in a way that hides the things you want to hide, and then leaving the stuff out in the open that you want your opponents to have to make bad decisions about shooting. And then stuff gets in, and it gets to chomp and punch and fight. And if you don't know those things, and you haven't experienced like learning those things, sometimes a lot of factions can feel rough, where you feel like you're being shot off the table, or you feel like you're not being able to engage with the game at all, or you like an AOS is a good example, is like a double turn, right? If the double turn feels bad for you, one of the first things you should do is figure out how to master your factions to mitigate double turns. For me, with like the Slaves of Darkness, I was suffering from double turn stuff really bad. I was always fishing for them, or I was always like susceptible to them, and I like learned to like chill. I need to chill with some of my units. Sometimes you can't just throw a hammer turn one. Sometimes you got to wait a couple of turns to throw a hammer.
And I remember having that conversation as we were learning AOS. Because we hadn't discussed it. Like, it's stuff you just think internally sometimes. You don't necessarily voice it. And we had got done with an AOS game, and John's essentially like, this feels terrible. What? What do you mean? Like, I thought this feels great. And in talking about it, it was a difference in play styles. And that, I just sort of naturally have waves and different threats, and John is more of like an all-at-once blanket pressure player. And, well, your camera did some weird stuff.
It did some real weird stuff.
And those can lead to some difficulties depending on faction, if you don't have the toughness to do blanket pressure. And I feel like that conversation sort of ticked a couple of boxes to start learning. And I think the difficulty in talking about this is that a lot of times when people talk about mastery, what they correlate it to is win percentage. That, like, masters of a game are top-tier competitive players. And I guess you could view it that way, but I would argue that that's maybe a little bit reductive, and that in a war game like this, there's really only going to be a single human being in the entire world who is the top-tier, number one best competitive player. And that is not the only person who gets to obtain, sort of a progression to mastery with their faction.
And I also feel like a lot of this gets skewed because, like, it's really easy online to be like, yes, I am invested in the theory crafting because I'm part of the, like, X faction Discord, and I had a 2-hour conversation on the efficiency of these 3 units, and then you go to play them on the table, and, like, a trash-tier faction beats the doorknobs off you, and you go, what? How'd that happen? Well, they positioned better, because, like, at the end of the day, these games are not won and lost solely on the stats on the, like, the data cards or the, like, war scrolls. It is faction understanding, utilizing your strengths, hedging up your weaknesses, and, like, proper positioning.
Macro strategy. Not micro strategic decisions and list building. Macro strategy.
And I think the difference between those two is why you have like we'll look at the current 40K competitive scene, right? Like to kind of, because competitive is what people think of when you think of mastery. There are factions like Drukhari, right? Dark Eldar, currently just like went 5-0 at a tournament, right? A couple weeks ago, people thought they were trash, like bottom 3. They got a data slate change, and everyone got a data slate change. People are still like, they're probably still in like the bottom half. They're still probably in like the bottom quarter, actually. They're probably pretty terrible. Like they need some love. They'll be terrible. And this absolute chief went bet and brought him to a tournament, went 5-0. I'm telling you right now, I played Dark Eldar a tournament. I'm gonna go 0-5. Like, I don't know shit about playing Dark Eldar. We use the same data sheets, same war scrolls.
But there is something he's doing that you don't do.
Yeah. I could probably take his same list and I might go 1-4.
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, it's why, for example, if you went to a tournament right now, you could Google, much like those Custodes players, best list in 40K. And you could see the list of the best players in the world. Easy peasy. One Google away. They're archived everywhere. And there are some people who try to, like, win the 2 and 3 warriors by taking those lists. And it doesn't work. You still see the same people in the top tables. Same group. Top tables. Even when they play bad factions. Still in top tables. Why? I would argue it's because in a game like this, skill and mastery of the game mechanics and your faction can allow you to outperform in matchups where, statistically speaking, on paper, if it was all predetermined and no amount of decision or luck, you would lose. And I think a lot of people hear it coined as mastery, and in a casual environment, it's like, I don't want to be a competitive dude. Like, that's cool. You don't have to be. But instead, maybe if I rephrased it as, hey man, do you want to, like, learn your faction? Like, do you want to, like, learn how to play the game? I think in that phrasing, most casual players would say yes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that most people who play this game don't just play one faction. Like, most people who play this game pick up multiple factions over the course of their career playing. And if you pick, like, your favorite faction to master and really dive into, it makes picking up anything else or teaching someone else their faction or having conversations about other factions or doing any of these things involved with the social aspects of the game easier. Like, the difference in decision making and ability to, like, look at lists and see what's good and what's not good and, like, what's fun and what's not fun improved massively when I spent, like, 2 solid years playing Skaven in 2nd edition. Like, when I just played Skaven for, like, my only AOS faction for a while. Like, really learned the rat, the way of the rat. And that book forces you to do that. That faction does, but it made me learn a lot. So now I'm playing other factions, and I'm like, I know what I'm going to do now. Which I think is, like, a side benefit, right? It's like, yeah, like, if you get mastery of, like, your Beast of Chaos, Joe, you're going to be pulling units across the table with spells and then charging them with big monsters and yeeting them into oblivion. It's going to be fun. It's going to be super cool. But I think what else it does is it allows you to then figure out, when I'm playing Lumineth, what tricks can I do that are similar, not necessarily to, like, move my opponent's models, because they probably don't have that spell, but, like, how can I utilize the units I have and synergies I have beyond just, like, this unit buffs this unit as a power pair, but instead, like, what situations can I create on the table to then have other units take advantage of?
How can I, instead of, like, forcing you to move, like with Beast of Chaos, how can I entice you to move to get the same effect? Or how can I position to resist an ability like that? To mitigate that potential damage if I come up against a faction that has that sort of trigger. It translates. And also, for me, like, the thing you said there is it also makes it easier to teach other people has been dramatically true. We have a lot of people who play the game who have not played in a while, or maybe they haven't played before, or we're teaching new people. When you have mastery of your faction, it allows you to play it without having to use a lot of brain space, leaving the rest of that brain space over to help be a good teacher and opponent. And, like, to make sure that the person who's learning is really getting all of your attention, because you have more of it to give. Whereas if I'm trying to teach, for example, if John was a newbie and I'm trying to teach John, but I have to flip through 8,000 sheets of paper to, like, try to remember what my war scrolls all do, I'm no longer really giving John my full attention. I'm trying to read a bunch of war scrolls and make things up as I go. And that's just, it makes it hard. You could still do it that way. You could even probably be successful that way if you have the right brain for it, but I think that would be difficult.
And also, like, narratively, right? Like, how does mastery impact narrative play? And I think that that is like the most forgotten about aspect. Like we want to tell stories with these games we're playing, right? Like say I bring Gene Slither Cult and Seth brings Tyranids, and you just are like, I'm gonna drop 4,000 points of Blood Angels on the table, and we're gonna do the Devastation Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And like the Gene Slither Cults go in first, they get obliterated, and it's just a massive horde of like Tyranids fighting against you, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna recreate some moments from this story. And I'm going to have this unit with this character in the squad charge this thing and do this thing. But because you didn't know how your faction's buffs work and you didn't know how to best utilize those, you didn't know how to set all that up, it's going to fall flat narratively. It's not going to feel right. And even beyond that, like creating the narrative situations, right? Like writing missions, writing like fun, interactive games becomes easier the more you understand about the mechanisms of the game and your faction itself. Mm-hmm. And if you're playing a narrative game with someone where you're trying to tell a story with each other and not necessarily just like beat the doorknobs off of each other, having mastery means that you can tune up or tune down based off of what they're going into.
Yeah. Because you understand the variables in both of those sort of balances on the scale.
Yeah. Because like naturally casual games and narrative games tend to be more asymmetrical when it comes to balance. Mm-hmm. But you can make that with intention instead so that it's a fun thing, not a nightmare.
Yeah. And I mean, especially in a casual group, like we said, if your casual group is like our casual group, you might have a variance of skill levels or experience levels. And if you don't have mastery of the game, you might inadvertently bring some highly strong list that is, maybe it's probably not the tournament list, but it's damn close.
And, I mean, I did that our 10th edition thing with Gene Slither Cult. Felt terrible.
Yeah. And that time, John just started the faction, and there was no tournament data, so we can't be mad at him, but it happened. But if you have mastery of a faction, and you really understand where the power is, in a casual setting, if you're going up against a lesser experienced player, you know where the power is? You know where to take it out. You know, if you know that you are going to be playing, I don't know, Eldar, and your buddy is playing for the first time and they're playing like early index Votann, it'd be awfully helpful if you knew that Wraith Knight was real strong and you just didn't have that Wraith Knight in the list anymore. That'd be real helpful.
Yeah.
It'd make for a much better game.
Man, that's really like super chill and bro of you.
That'd be cooler if you didn't. And if you were someone in the casual mindset, you're looking for a good game, not top tier, breaking edge competitive viability. And mastery gives that to you. Which is really like, those reasons are all good. Okay? Like they're all good. But I think there is one that is maybe the most important here that I want to end on. And that is that I think for most people, even casual people, maybe especially casual people, actually, I'm going to take a hot take. I'm going to make a big swing here. We'll see if I can back it up. I think especially for casual people, mastery of the game and the factions that you really love can bring an incredible amount of enjoyment. And a just overwhelming amount of joy. And at first I was like, no, surely the competitive people like that more, but I don't think so. I think it's especially for casuals. You know, if you're a top tier bleeding edge competitive player, you are worried about result. You're worried about win rate. You're worried about percentage. You're worried about performance. And that's great. It's cool. But I think for a casual, most casual players are not tracking their win rates. They're not tracking their percentages. They're not tracking their, like, efficiencies. They're just not. Instead, you just want to improve. Like that, it's that simple. Like, you aren't a win-at-all-cost player. You just want to feel like over time, you're improving. You're getting better. And you're learning stuff. The game's getting easier. You're not having to look at the book so much. You're not having to struggle so much. Your games are more fun. They're more chatty. Because you don't have to read as much. And you like that feeling. And I think that drives most of us.
I agree. And I also think there's another step beyond that too, where like when you start diving into mastery, you all of a sudden start thinking, oh man, I could go to a tournament.
You could.
And then like that idea of going and playing a tournament becomes less daunting. Like it becomes a thing where you're like, oh, I could go and have a good time. And then you go and you meet people that are of the similar mindset of trying to like master a faction and aren't like the negative win at all cost players. They want to win the game. They want to enjoy a victory, but they're not going to do it at the cost of like being a bad opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And because you've been mastering your faction and they're mastering their faction, now it's a skill, like fun, like honing your blade against each other thing that you might enjoy, but you would have never enjoyed that previously. Like, and the only way you get there is through mastery. And even if that's not something you're looking at now, it's something you could enjoy in the future. You're never going to know unless you like try.
Yeah. I think it's worth it.
And I think, yeah, some of those events are just cool. Like, that's something like me and Joe like would like to do in the future. It's like go tournament, maybe go to conventions, maybe say, oh,
maybe give it a try.
And I don't think that I would have felt that way if not for the mastery I've built up over the last like 4 years with you, Joe.
Mm-hmm. Really playing more and more consistently, and just trying to learn the game rather than win.
Yeah, like because it takes a while, especially if you can't play all the time. Like playing intentionally is not just like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna drink a beer and throw like 90 clan rats at you. Like no, I'm trying to play like an actual game, like a real game, if you will, not a meme game.
And then at the end, talk about where I done goofed, and then learn from my goofs. And I think for the average person, not just in the hobby, but like just in life, we enjoy feeling that we're improving at something. We just do.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your job, that's a hobby, that's a craft. It's nice to feel like you're improving at something. Just universally, I think it's somewhere baked into our little electrically charged sacks of fat in our skulls that improvement good, improvement fun, monkey brain happy, and
it's like the little clapping cymbal monkey just going.
Yes, I feel the clapping cymbal monkey when I slowly improve. And as casuals, what are we if not chasing clapping cymbal monkey? Like what?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing here?
Reject modernity. Embrace clapping cymbal monkey.
That's the perfect way to end it. So please, y'all, maybe just consider it. Just consider it. If you don't like the word mastery, we'll come up with another term. We'll recoin it. By God, we'll
haste, critical strike, fuck it.
Call it coolness. You're being cooler. You're the coolest dudes.
You're the raddest motherfuckers
that ever done been.
I used 2. Oh no.
You're doing it for Dale, all right? You just get out there, play some games, have a time, improve. And this one is a little weirder, but I'm just going to ask if y'all have thoughts about mastery. Maybe put them in the comments. Maybe I'm off base. Maybe people don't feel like they like improvement. Maybe people care about win rate more. Or they don't care to improve at all. I don't know. I could be off base. We have limited perspectives because we're human beings. And if we're wrong, I'd love to know.
I love hearing I'm wrong. We had a commenter on like the Data Slate video be like, hey, I think y'all had like a knee-jerk reaction to this. And I sat and thought about it for a while. And I was like, maybe I was a little harsh. Like maybe the guy's got a point. I'm gonna go play a couple games about it. And I played a game and I was like, oh man, maybe he was an asshole. Like,
yeah.
So
opinions not set in stone.
Yeah, like you can help you can be part of our conversation.
You could help us improve our mastery of not being dipshits. And we'd appreciate that. Or maybe we're like sort of onto something, but not in the way we thought. Love that. And of course, if you want to start on odd and maybe a frank conversation in your play group, share it around. We'd appreciate it. And I'm sorry if there's fallout. And we'll be working on some more videos behind the scenes. The lore videos are continuing. Working on more podcasts. Playing more game. And for now, it's been all of our opinions. Bonafide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next one.
See y'all.
Might start some fist fights in wargaming groups. Damn it, Jerry, you ain't improved a bit.